I will play one event when everybody is settled and listening, and then we will start official proceedings. So please do. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I met David late 1970s in London. I visited him in '82 in Harare. If he hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here playing this music today. I would still be living in London. So this one's for you, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really beautiful music. I want to welcome everybody who's here. Of course, first and foremost, Sue and Ben, Lisa, and Oscar, the rector, and the many, many friends, family members, colleagues who are comrades, who are either in the room or who are joining us by live streaming. I know this event is being is live streamed and is being watched in many parts of the world, in India and Australia and Latin America and London, I know. So that says something about what we're celebrating here today. Thanks for coming to celebrate David's life and work today, to celebrate and remember the husband and father, friend and colleague, and of course the comrade. We've organized the celebration jointly between the family, the People's Health Movement, and the School of Public Health. And I know there will be other events as well happening both in Cape Town this weekend and also in November, and also in other parts of the world. So there's a lot of celebration and remembering around the world. The biggest challenge we've had in preparing for today was one of containment. How do we do justice to a life and a man who, as we've seen from the flood of tributes and messages that has come in over the last 2.5 weeks, has engaged and touched people all over the globe in all spheres of society. And of course we can't. And so I would encourage those of you who haven't done that yet to visit the pages on the websites of the People's Health Movement and the School of Public Health. We've both set up tribute pages where we gathered what people submitted online, but also the many, many, many emails we've received, text messages and so on. And they are an incredible testimony. We will gather all of that together and compile it and make it available in some form later on. We debated for a long time whether we should read tributes today and choose from the ones that we have, the hundreds, literally hundreds. And we eventually decided that we cannot do that because how do we choose between them? We were very clear that it would not be David wouldn't approve of us sort of reading the ministers or the WHO General Secretary's one and not a range of others that have come from many, many other parts of his professional and personal life. So we won't read any tributes. They are on the website, and again, read them. We've also, if you haven't written anything yet, you would like to write something by hand, we have put on the table outside some pen and paper, loose paper. If you want to write something on there, that too we will compile together with all the other tributes and the photos in a memory book later on. This afternoon, while we're here, we will hear from David's family. Representatives from the two organizations closest to David's heart, and from colleagues from the School of Public Health, which has been David's sort of institutional home for the past 26 years. And even though he retired 9 years ago, and many of us probably were in this very same room 9 years ago to celebrate his retirement, as we all know, he didn't really retire. He shifted his focus somewhat to spend more time with the People's Health Movement and getting that running and moving. But he was very much still a prominent feature in the school. And that was always good. It wasn't always easy. But he is so much an integral part of the school that he never really left. And as you probably most of you know, we wouldn't be sitting in this building, having started, as Joanna Small just reminded me, in two tiny little rooms in one of the very old buildings on campus, if it wasn't for David. Before I ask David's son Oscar to come up, there's one thing that was important for me to say, I wanted to say. We are today celebrating a very remarkable man and an incredible legacy. But having worked with David for 26 years, it is very important to me that in doing so, we also need to acknowledge that David could only be David as we knew him because of those closest to him. His family, the particularly women who worked so closely and devotedly with him, particularly Lynette Martin and Bridget Lloyd, but there were many others and some men like Melvin. And of course, first and foremost, Sue. I often commented on the fact that Sue was is a professional and academic in her own right. Also held the family together, held the home together. She was the one that when we both still had children in primary school was there to pick up the kids like me in the afternoon because that she did all of that and more. So I think it's very, very important that as we pay tribute to David today, we also celebrate Sue, and that we all owe her a huge debt of gratitude. So let's keep that in mind as we proceed. And now I would like to ask Oscar to come up and talk on behalf of the family.
I can hold it. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm doing a life history as we know it of my dad. Okay. My dad was born on the 5th of August, 1945 in Cape Town, the day before the Hiroshima atomic blast. Little boy was dropped to Louis and Anne Sanders, both second-generation Jewish emigres from Lithuania in the early 1900s, escaping pogroms. He grew up in Zimbabwe, then known as Rhodesia, and had a very close extended family on both Sanders and Nell sides. And children of these cousins remain tightly knit. He went to the University of Rhodesia, UR, where he enrolled in the medical school. He had an inclination to be a comedian, but his parents prevailed for a medical career instead, and he obtained a University of Birmingham medical degree. The University of Rhodesia was a multiracial university in the midst of apartheid-style Rhodesia. It was there he became politicized, supporting colleagues in the Zimbabwe liberation movement, and was arrested twice for this support. It was there he also developed strong views on the need for equity and health by starting up student-run Gillingham Clinic in Divarasekwa Township, which was based on the Shawco model. It was there he also showed leadership and enthusiasm for partying and dancing by being chairperson of the University RAG Committee, which organized the charity ball. He then went to the UK in the 1970s to escape being called up to the Rhodesian military service. He obtained an MRCP and specialized as a pediatrician. He became more involved in Southern African liberation movements, was an active participant in the medical campaign against private practice in the UK, and fought for the preservation of the NHS. He was also a part of the Politics of Health group, became a big advocate for primary health care, a firm supporter of the 1978 Alma-Ata Declaration, and got a diploma in tropical medicine and community health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He worked with Zimbabwe liberation movements to devise policy for the new Zimbabwe after the Lancaster House talks in 1978, and commenced his seminal book, The Struggle for Health, which started as a small pamphlet but morphed into an illustrated book on the political economy of health. In 1976, he met Sue, my mother, still a medical student, who shared his political views and principles after working in primary healthcare initiatives in northern India, and shared his love of escapes from London to Wales to Scotland and Ireland and a lot more. The 1980s saw David returning to Zimbabwe on the eve of independence. He attended the independence ceremony to celebrate the end of British rule and commencement of rule by people of Zimbabwe. The ceremony included the late Bob Marley, and unfortunately had to be curtailed as police fired tear gas on people celebrating outside the Rufaro Stadium who wanted to enter and enjoy the music, which was perhaps an omen of things to come. He worked for Oxfam and recruited healthcare workers from overseas to assist in building up district health services on the primary healthcare model, with a strong emphasis on community organizational structures that had been developed during the Zimbabwe liberation struggle. He also ran a rural child feeding program based on local foods. He then transitioned to the University of the Zimbabwe Department of Pediatrics, and then to community health, where he organized a rural-based teaching program for undergraduates. These rural primary healthcare initiatives inspired many healthcare workers to continue this type of work all over the world, and also resulted in several marriages. His children, Ben, Lisa, and myself, were born during this time and were a treasured addition to his life. He also further developed his love of fly fishing, which was a big feature of family holidays with his extended family, who was such an important part of his life in Zimbabwe. In the 1990s, he moved to Cape Town, in part for political reasons, but also because his late mother in Cape Town was beginning to need more support. He was instrumental in founding the School of Public Health at UWC, developing child nutrition initiatives, and became a very productive academic, but never departed from his primary role as an activist in organizations such as the Alternative Information and Development Center, AIDC, People's Health Movement, Jews for a Just Palestine, and campaigns against the international monopoly of food companies which promote the obesity epidemic. His views on the link between political change and health, as embodied in the Alma-Ata Declaration, and the fundamental importance of addressing the social determinants of health, came together in the People's Health Movement, of which he was a founder and to which he remained fervently committed. Hence, we have asked for donations to the People's Health Movement in lieu of flowers. David had an unshakable love and deep concern for his family, and took great pride in us. He had a strong sense of Jewish identity, yet remained principled in his stance against Zionism, and he participated in the struggle for a free Palestine. He loved fly fishing, nature, and socializing. We will miss his razor-sharp insight, intellect, and wonderful sense of humor, his ability to relate to people of all backgrounds, and his dancing. We admire him, love him deeply, and will miss him sorely. Thank you. I am now introducing my brother Ben, who will speak further. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dear family, friends, colleagues, and loved ones, thank you deeply for being here today to celebrate the life and work of my father. It is hard to know what to say at times like these, how best to honor and pay tribute to such an amazing man as my father, and how to genuinely express the deep love and gratitude for his life, how to work within the limitations of words and concepts to describe the way he enriched our lives. One thing is certain, he enriched our lives greatly, and his life was enriched by so many of the people in this room. So thank you deeply for being a part of my father's extraordinary life. My Aunt Jennifer, who grew up with my father in Zimbabwe and is here today, described my father well, saying, your dad was my best, such a very special, complicated, crazy character with the biggest heart. Yes, he was very special. He was complicated. and he did have the biggest heart. His heart was why he was able to love me unconditionally, my siblings, Lisa and Oscar, my mother, and many, many more people across the world. Uta has already paid tribute to my mother, but I will just say that she was his anchor in so many ways and deserves her own special mention here today, for she is truly one of a kind. But his love and compassion extended beyond his family, to his friends, colleagues, and critically, to those less fortunate than us, as he dedicated his life to improving the health and lives of other people. My Aunt Jen's tribute is but one of countless tributes pouring in from across the world over the last few weeks. Many public, many private, spanning continents and cultures, from ministry offices and UN headquarters to activists and academics, including many of you in the room today. It is humbling and inspiring to hear so many people from so many walks of life say how my father influenced them, mentored them, supported them, and changed the course of their lives through his deep and abiding commitment to public health and social justice, and for standing up when it was most needed. He was and remains a visionary, a leader, a truth teller, an activist, an academic, an intellectual, and a true champion for health for all. A champion who was always willing to speak truth to power, no matter what people thought or what was convenient, because he genuinely cared and had the biggest heart. And he never, ever gave up or faltered in his quest to make the world a better place until the end of his days. My father was not only about work, even though he was almost always working. He lived life with a twinkle in his eye, a spark that burned bright and a mischievous grin. He was never shy to tell me or any of my family how much he loved and cared for us, unusual for a man from his time. He loved family occasions and always infused them with his unique sense of humor, deep connectedness to his Jewish heritage, and above all, warmth and compassion. Remarkably, though, he was even late for these occasions, even when they occurred at our family home. So if anyone here thinks they've spent a long time waiting for David, trust me, our family and probably my mother are top of the waiting for David charts. That is not debatable. My father lived a full life. There's no doubt in that. He never slowed down and worked so hard to improve the conditions of others. He did not simply go through the motions, and he is one of few people in this world who put his values first for the greater good, and that is quite something. Despite this, he made time for his family and friends and was able to connect with people across cultures, across contexts, across continents. He certainly made time for fishing, his greatest hobby, more likely an addiction, and we take comfort that his last day on this earth was spent fly fishing along a river in Wales and then spending time with my mother and friends. Of course, his sudden passing has left us in shock, devastated by the loss of such a man. What a man. In some ways, I thought my father was immortal, and having spoken to many others, it seems I was not the only one. He has now left us, leaving a huge void in our lives. But he has also left a legacy of love and compassion, of family and friendship, of justice and equity, of heart and soul. I can only say how grateful I am to be his son and to be part of this family and broader network of all who knew and loved him. He has left an indelible mark on my life and on so many other lives, a mark far greater than even he knew. After such a life, he deserves to rest. May he rest in peace. May his spirit continue to live among us, challenging us to do the right thing and be our best selves. May his legacy continue to inspire past, present, and future generations in the struggle for health and equity. May his family, friends, colleagues, and everyone he touched have long life. And may his soul continue to roam the mountain rivers and streams of this world in search of the perfect catch. May we give thanks for his life. Thank you.
Hi, I just have a very small offering today. It's a poem that has given me comfort during this time. It's actually only an excerpt of Rumi's poem, On the Day I Die. On the day I die, when I'm being carried away toward the grave, don't weep. Don't say, he's gone, he's gone. Death has nothing to do with going away. The sun sets and the moon sets, but they are not gone. Death is a coming together. The tomb looks like a prison, but it's really release into union. The human seed goes down in the ground like a bucket into a well. It grows and it comes up full of some unimagined beauty. Your mouth closes here and immediately opens with a shout of joy there. Thank you.
I now would like to ask the rector of UWC, Professor Tyrone Pretorius, to speak, who actually was Dean of the Faculty of Community and Health Sciences for many years when David was director and was building what we have today. So, welcome.
Thank you. Professor Sue Fawkes, David's wife, David's children, Lisa, Ben, and Oscar, Professor Uta Liman, Director of School of Public Health, representatives from the People's Health Movement, colleagues and guests, welcome to the house that David built. Sue, Lisa, Ben, and Oscar, and the wider Saunders family, our deepest condolences on your loss. In David, we had an exemplary human being, an inspiring teacher, an outstanding scholar, and a committed activist. For you as a family, you are so much more. And we as the UWC community, we share in your sorrow today. I've had the privilege and sometimes the curse to work with David for many, many years. When our former rector, Professor Jakes Gerwel, started the idea of a School of Public Health, I was, as Utas just mentioned, I was the Dean of Community and Health Sciences. Professor Gerwel, writing in the South African Medical Journal in 1991, spelled out his vision for the school. He wrote, and I quote, "The primary mission of the School of Public Health will be to promote public health through teaching, research, field training, consultation, public information, dissemination, and service to and fostering of partnerships with communities. Such education and training," he continues, "are essential to transform the South African healthcare system into a community participation primary health care service. To carry out that vision, David was recruited in 1993. And if I may just digress from my speech here, just for a moment, I do remember the recruitment of Professor David Sanders. I think Jakes became aware of him through his health activism that his son spoke about. And when we as a faculty drew up the shortlist, we got the CV from the rector's office, and in those days it wasn't emailed. It was brought over to us, and he made it onto the shortlist. So when we were in the senior appointments committee, even though Jakes had sent the CV to me, this dream of public health was so important to him that he was a bit unsure of whether he was the 3 candidates that were shortlisted, whether we knew enough about them. So he said to me, go and find out about these 3. Now, you couldn't just go onto Google in 1993. And so I literally first met David in the library, going through journals to pick up some of his articles for the appointments committee, to look at his citations. And in those days, it was quite a task just to sit in the library to go through journals. Now, initially, the idea was that the School of Public Health would be a virtual school, and that it would draw on the expertise of the existing health disciplines within the university in order to carry out this vision that Jakes had. And so right from the outset, I think Uta mentioned, the School of Public Health consisted of 3 people. I think it was Soraya, it was David, and Ibrahim Rasool. And they were located on the 2nd floor of the old arts building, and the dean's office, my office, was located on the bottom floor of the old arts building. And David's office was literally on top of mine. And I think he found that very appealing. Because, as Soraya reminded us, David hated bureaucracy. And we had many boardroom battles around getting him to do the things that is required for governance. So the idea of literally sitting on top of my head was very, very appealing to him. However, our idea of a virtual school, David just didn't pay any attention to that, because very soon he ran out of space on the top floor because the offices just kept filling up, and we had to move him to the prefab building. That also, he ran out of space. And look at where you are sitting today. What a remarkable journey. Through the school, the university has gained an international and a continental reputation. It is a school that the university is indeed very proud of. The postgraduate programs in this school attracts candidates from across the continent. I'm aware, and I'm sure Sue, you will confirm this, that other institutions approached David over the years, wanting the combination of his passionate advocacy and scholarly research to enrich their student lives. But David stayed at UWC because he fiercely believed in what they were trying to achieve in the School of Public Health. With all his achievements, including an impressive record of scholarly research, David was not one to rest on his laurels. His deeply felt passion for public health made him a fierce critic of government shortfalls when it came to offering health service to the poorest amongst us. David, such a committed activist and passionate reformer, turned others into believers. When I read the tributes to this remarkable person, I was struck by how many friends, colleagues, ministers used the same language to describe him. Visionary, inspirational, a consummate public health professional, an icon for health rights, not only in Africa, but in the world. A person of incredible principle, leading by example. The author Ernest Hemingway wrote, "Every man's life ends the same way. It is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another." David's life has been a well-lived one. His contribution to our world here at UWC and in the rest of the world has been significant, and his presence remains as strong as when he was with us. The School of Public Health was Jake's dream. In fulfilling that dream, it becomes David's legacy. May your soul rest in peace.
Thank you. you very much, Norway and friends. I now want to introduce Professor Louis Reynolds from the People's Health Movement, but also one of David's closest friends, to speak to us.
So I first met David in 1968. He doesn't remember that. We didn't remember that. We met briefly when we were fifth-year medical students. He was in Zimbabwe, a student there. We met in Cape Town at the Red Cross Children's Hospital. He was here for some reason or other. I don't know. I don't know why I remembered it and he didn't. I mean, I can understand why he didn't remember it, but I think maybe I remembered it because his father, who we used to call One Eye Sanders, because he had one eye from an injury, I think, that he had as a young person. So maybe I remember David because at the time we met, I linked him to his father, but I think more likely he said something in that brief interchange that kind of stuck. It made me think, well, this guy is something special. And then in the early 90s, we met again during the struggle for health. After the Sanders family moved to Durban. And we were in different organizations at the time. David was in an organization called SASO, and I was in an organization called the Progressive Primary Healthcare Network. But we were working towards health policy based on primary healthcare for what came after apartheid. We knew that would come. And we knew that what we needed in this country was primary healthcare in its radical form, the form that emerged from the Alma Ata Declaration. So at that time, I was working in the pediatric intensive care unit at Red Cross Hospital, and David was setting up this establishment. Now, I remember coming to meetings here in the old prefab building, and what struck me was the buzz, the incredible sort of positive energy and intellectual buzz that was going on in those narrow little corridors and tiny rooms in that prefab establishment. It was totally different to the kind of dead, same old stuff we had when we were trying to discuss health and the politics of health in our establishment. So our work throughout our time was centered around this thing, primary health care as a way of achieving health for all. Now, David would want me to say today, I'm very sure, that this idea of primary health care is being captured by organizations that have themselves been captured, such as the World Health Organization and UNICEF, and it's being turned from its radical form into a kind of mechanical thing. And he would want us to make sure that we didn't lose its true nature in the future. And who would forget the way David, people who happened to be at the 4th People's Health Assembly in Bangladesh, the way David unpicked and critically analyzed the Astana Declaration on primary health care. During our work together, we usually sat at my computer in my completely chaotic office, working on presentations and articles we were writing. We would argue about what words to use, what slides to include, which slides to leave out. David always wanted, in my view, far too many slides. And I always wanted far fewer, because I could only handle one slide a minute when I spoke, and David could get through about 100. But what was amazing about it is that in that speed, he could simplify things and make it understandable for everyone. So we were great friends. David was kind and generous and humorous and inquisitive and frank and honest. He could get to the hub of any complicated issue immediately. He completely disdained bullshit and could see through it in all its forms, whether it was well disguised or just smelly. He knew how to see the truth in a situation. He had great pride, as his family have said, in his Jewishness. And in that Jewishness, he supported the Palestinian struggle for freedom and human rights. And over the years, we kind of got closer in our families and so on. We had fantastic holidays together, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Nature's Valley, and weekends away in different places. Highlights of those holidays and times away were cuisine and conversation, companionship, and children. And particularly our two youngest grandchildren, Sophie and Jacob. They used to play these games with David. Sophie would say, "David, guess what? What? You're a stinky and I'm not." And they'd find ways of catching each other out by phrasing it differently. "David, I was on the beach, and do you know what? What? You're a stinky and I'm not." And used to carry on like that. And Jacob was much smaller. His big thing was to give David a fright. So he'd hide somewhere, and we'd have to say, "Have you seen Jacob? Where is he?" And David would look around to find Jacob, and then Jacob would jump out of his hiding place and say, "Boo." And David would fall off the chair or out of the window, or he'd get an incredible fright. And it was fantastic. So in 1995, we both realized that we were turning 50. So I was a week younger than David. I'm about a month older than him now. But I was always a week younger than him. And we had our birthdays together, or some of our birthdays, our big ones. So 50, we decided to have a joint birthday party, and we kind of labeled it 100 years of servitude. And we had a fantastic party. And when we turned 70, it seemed incredible, because turning 70 is not something that should happen to anyone except old fogies. It's sort of not something that happens to you, you know. But anyway, there it was. So Sue, I think, found a postcard with a car on it, and the slogan was, "You used to be a reckless youth. Now you're a youthless wreck." And that was the slogan for our 70th birthday party. And then we kind of thought we might not make it till 80, and that we better have the next one when we had 150 years of servitude. But we're not, unfortunately, there yet. So a week before he died, David and I were working at my computer, again, arguing about which slides to leave out, which slides to put in, which slides had too many words on them, which were illegible. He was saying to me, I must make my text bigger, and so on. And we were writing an article for the Daily Maverick on the National Health Insurance, and trying to address the tremendous national hysteria that's happening around it. And that was a week before, and then that's the last time I saw David, and now he's gone. And we'll never do that again. We'll never do that again, and it feels kind of empty. And Sophie will never be able to trick him again into being a stinky. And Jacob will never be able to give him a fright. And the world is a poorer place without David. We, those who knew him, will always be kind of emptier for the rest of our lives. And we will miss him, but the struggle for health for all will continue. Thank you.
Now I want to introduce the strong woman who is leading us in song, Miss Noeem Dai, who is also part of the People's Health Movement, a community activist, and clearly a very, very strong voice. So please come and talk.
Siyavuma.
I'm sweating a lot. I'm worried because I'm gaining a lot of weight.
Siyavuma.
My family died of sugar diabetes and high
Siyavuma.
blood. Go to the doctor. I don't know what to do.
Siyavuma sisi.
I need your help.
Siyavuma.
I need your help
Siyavuma.
because I am poor.
Siyavuma.
Nothing is the solution except healthy food, said David Sander. We balance the black, poor people and the rich by having one house, one garden, one family, one chicken. You need to eat healthy. We need healthy food. We need nutrition. And you are going to be healed. Siyavuma.
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 Siyavuma. Siyavuma. Siyavuma. Siyavuma.
Siyavuma.
Siyavuma.
Siyavuma. Sikhalo somntana sihoye thula mntana wena ukhalelani wena ukhalelani wena ukhale isikhalo somntana sihoye thula mntana wena ukhalelani wena ukhalelani thula mntana wena ukhalelani sizojika izinto thula wena ukhalelani wena ukhalelani
Jikisito tulamtan olukholeloni Ladies and gentlemen, this is a community meeting. We are going to give the report of the last workshop that we conducted with David Sender. The date was 23 and the 24 of the last month.
We were at Shalima Hotel Gardens. The community members, we were together. Teachers, community health workers, SGPs, we were there talking about unhealthy lifestyle. David Sender, Sibonga, David Sender, David Sender, Sibonga, David Sender, 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 David Sender,
Away to. Away to. Forward.
His vision was to balance the white of the poor and the rich. His vision was to balance the poor and the riches together.
Yes.
He was moving in the street of Kukulet. He was walking up and down the New Crossroads.
Yes.
Forward with the NCD program. Forward.
Forward.
Forward with NCD program. Forward.
Forward. Away to.
Everybody's here. The David Sender baton is in your hands. We need to take his war work forward.
Martha. Away to. We have decided to plant a garden. 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 We have decided to plant the garden. We have decided to plant the garden. We have decided to plant a garden. We have decided to plant. Hallelujah. No more turning back. No more turning back. No more turning back. No more turning back. Manda! Manda! Long live the spirit of David. Long live. You know, first and foremost, let me greet the family, Sue and your daughter and your two sons. I know it's hard to say goodbye. Very, very hard. We were fortunate as a community of Iguguletu and people's movement gathering at Shamila Garden, the 26th, as they quoted. Seeing David for the last, the last activity that we did with him, the next day, second day, I was going to recap what we did the day before. So I have to start with the icebreaker. Then I said, everyone must stand up. Come, David, everyone must stand up. Then he stood up. Then I said, we're going to write my name. Nah? When we started write my name is Noe. Then David started to, Noe, first make it sure that there's no one taking a video. Nah? Before I can dance, Noe, please, I don't want my video to no one, we were fortunate really as a community of Guguletu. And when he left us the same day, before lunch, he called me outside and Comrade Tinashe.
Christian people, they always said you hear voices or there's some signs when you're going to leave. You know, I can still remember the wisdom, last words that he taught us about People's Health Movement. If health movement died in our hands, Tinashe, I think he will hit us left, right, and center. Because we're fortunate enough, he called us outside talking to us about the way forward of the project that he wants to do at Gugulethu. That project is not going to die because we are still alive. We are going to carry the baton of Prof and do what was his objective and vision about the healthy living style. You know, every day when I'm taking my coffee at home, I think about him. He will watch me and say, how many sugars? How many teaspoons sugar? You know? So that teaching, you understand, it rings every day when I have to drink 8 cups of coffee a day. But seeing that he was my mentor, next to me every time, sometimes I would like to cheat and say, I'm tired of this peanut butter and bread. What is this man all about? We must eat peanut butter. We want meat, not peanut butter and jam. Even when winter school is here, he will look at us and see what are you eating? And that same day, he said, I've been watching all of you. You've been taking Coke, acid drink. Only 3 people drink water with me here. You know, I said, this man, you know, we want to cheat, but at the end of the day, he leave a legacy for us to look after ourselves. He always says you can be well built like me, wearing size 42, but if you are active, you are doing exercise, you know, you will live long.